call you back in at the end of Dominic Ryan's presentation. So our next speaker is Dominic Ryan. Dominic is the director of Andrew Ryan Limited. For me, a most interesting company, a company who I unfortunately had never had any contact with actually, but always watched them from a distance or whatever, and just wondered about their whole strategy and how different it was from so many other Irish companies going on that export journey. Okay, so I'm really delighted. Actually, I had a conversation with Dominic yesterday. I was excited getting off the video link with you, Dominic. Okay, so really looking forward to your presentation and the story behind Andrew Ryan. I mean, a great story that you and your brother are bringing to Europe and the world or whatever, you know. So over to you, sir.
Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me and see me.
We can hear you and see you loud and clear, Dominic.
Very good. Okay, so I'm going to just start with the presentation here. So obviously, company's Andrew Ryan. As the name suggests underneath, we're on the go since 1973. That just gives you a little idea of generally what we get up to on a day-to-day basis. Just one or two pictures, the type of stuff that we do. That's a little picture.
Your slides haven't come up yet.
All right. Don't know why that is. Hold on.
So here they're coming now. Yeah, there we go. Oh, now. Okay. Yeah, okay, perfect.
Okay, so it's there. So, as I said, as the name suggests, Andrew Ryan, craftsmanship since 1973. This is the type of work that we get up to on a day-to-day basis. We're quite a high-end luxury kitchen company in the main, but we also do house fit-outs and boot rooms and all the rest of it, libraries, bedrooms. This is sort of typical imagery in terms of what we make on a day-to-day basis. This is a picture here of one of our showrooms over in the UK. So a little bit of history about the company. It was formed by our parents, or my parents, Andrew and Elizabeth, in 1973. It grew and developed a reputation for high quality fitted kitchens. Our parents, they retired in 2007, and myself and Aidan bought the company out at that stage, which was really bad timing in terms of what was coming down the tracks at us. And in 2009, at the height of the recession, we never found ourselves looking for work up until then. And we discovered that we either had to reduce the size of the business, or we had to find an alternative market or alternative business somewhere else, and that was abroad. So through a sort of a chance meeting with a client who was the director of a large construction company actually in Ireland, and he couldn't get his villa finished in the south of France. He was tearing his hair out, and it was the poison chalice within that construction company. Anybody who got appointed to the job wanted to run from it because they were dealing with the French. And we took it over. He approached us in February, and in March 2010, we started working in a small village, which is Valbonne in France, fitting out a first property down there. So our business today, we're in two countries, Ireland and the UK. We did have a showroom in Monaco. We actually shut that last year and moved it to the UK. There's a lot of reasons for that, predominantly the attack on the Promenade des Anglais, where a lunatic drove a truck down the seaside resort of Nice and killed lots of people, made the Monegasque authorities very, very tricky to deal with and very sensitive to, from a security point of view, and made working there very, very difficult indeed. So our brand has grown from a fitted kitchen provider to one of Ireland's luxury designers and installers. And we do stuff basically halfway around the world at this stage. So 47 years on the go, we've 29 staff working directly for us full time, and we have, you know, a small army of specialist gilders, hand painters, masons, all sorts of people involved that we use on a regular basis. And we've two permanent showrooms based in the UK and obviously Ireland. Our export experience. So what I'm just going to talk about is all the stuff we did wrong. We did lots of it wrong. Our big thing was, as you can see in this slide, was to get to a position of sustainable growth. So for the first few years, a lot of what we were doing were very specialized projects dealing with super wealthy people in very fancy locations. But the thing that we sort of found difficult about that was getting sustainable growth out of it. There were more chance, it was bringing business in by chance and by networking. You know, we didn't have a sustainable, growable model. So what I decided to do, just look at it from, we had to look at the whole thing from our product, place, price, people, promotion, and that led us to where we are now, which will be at the end of the slide. So product, yeah, I suppose we started off first doing a lot of very specialized stuff. We could have been gilding, trompe l'oeil, really, really high-end stuff. And the other thing that we discovered when we started is different markets and countries have varying trends, and we needed to tailor our product to fit for those markets. So what you do in Ireland may not necessarily be desirable in France or the UK or anywhere else. And the other thing is different, which is really important, is different climates and different areas have very different needs from a material point of view. So if we're fitting kitchens in the Caribbean or we're doing it in the south of France in a very humid environment, the materials that you use here in Ireland may not necessarily be the materials that you can use there. For example, in the Caribbean, you have to use phenolic grade Lloyd's grade 3 plywood. If you use MDF, the local insects will just eat it out of it. It'll be in bits and no length at all. The other thing is, and that's what the picture on the right-hand side shows, is quality control. So when you start sending stuff a long way away, the last thing you need to be is called back to sort something out on it. So we spend a lot of time, we implemented a scenario, and we do this still all the time, all the projects. We dry fit, we check everything to make sure it's 100% in our factory before we send it out, and it will save you a fortune. When we were working on specialist projects, yeah, the unforeseen can cause lots of delays, lots of cost. And what I'll get to at the end of this is we are sort of starting to deviate more away from the specialized projects into more standardized product offering that we can control. And as it says down there, restriction for scalability. All of the above has led us to review every product decision with a view on its scalability. Now, when we do something, every product must be designed for the local market, quality control, and has to conform with local requirements and be able to be produced at scale. So there are, in certain countries, there are also requirements where certain materials are illegal. You can't use them, where we can use them here. Even down to we ship appliances around the place. So if you want to ship refrigeration off to the Caribbean, you have to use different sets of compressors in it. In the south of France, they have different regulations in terms of how you connect up fridges and cookers and all the rest of it. So there's a lot of stuff to learn from that point of view. So what we did anyways, we went back to our product and we did a big exercise, and we actually used some external design consultancy as well to help us do this. And we came up with collections of products. So we launched about in 2014, the Monaco collection, New England, Bruges, and the Seaway collection. And we did that to have a product that we could reproduce, you know, even though it'll vary quite a bit, and sell and teach our staff, which is very important as well, you know, in terms of how to make it and to make it efficiently. So that's product collections. Place, so transport, and you see there a picture on the right hand side. That's the palace down in Monaco. Sounds very fancy and all the rest of it. It was an absolute nightmare to work in it. We encountered the security guards. It's up on a rock, so in the morning they might just say, today, Ryan's, you can't go onto the rock. So I'd have 5 fitters over there, and today we can't go onto the rock. So we'd have to wait until the security guard or the policeman had to go for a wee, and then we'd sneak up onto the rock anyway. So sometimes you've got to sort of ride over the rules, but local, where you're doing stuff, you know, there's we found it easier to do, I suppose, that's local knowledge. I suppose I'll get to that in a minute. Transport. So we transport our product ourselves everywhere. We've tried to subcontract out transporting. You spend a fortune on packing it and going through it. And then what we found is no matter what we did, the logistic companies never really told us the truth on what they were going to do with it. And they split the loads. We'd find stuff damaged, you know, very, very hard to control. So that's why we discovered we could get our trucks down to the south of France in 14 hours. So that's what we did. And we could control everything from there. Local access, some locations, so you have to do your research, or you know, when you're going on site to do a project. For example, in Monaco, they have all sorts of permits. If you want to park a van, you have to have a permit. You need a lot of local knowledge doing that. Local regulations we've got caught by. Jours fériés, or bank holidays in France in May, we've had the police watching our truck to make sure we didn't move it when we were 4 kilometers from a site. We've been, you know, some sites have noise restrictions. There's a lot of stuff that you have to plan for in advance depending on where you're installing. Health and safety and insurance. So different countries have different health and safety. Ireland's actually pretty good on the health and safety front, whereas some of the places we've ended up working or sending our staff to, and it's actually a big risk for the company if you end up in a sort of a third world type scenario where health and safety doesn't really matter. You have to be very conscious of that before you send your staff there so that nothing happens to them. And some of the projects like working, say, a palace or a very high-end building, you have to really get to grips with your insurance policy so that, you know, there are things that can happen, and it's, you know, they can be very expensive. And sometimes, as well as that, you know, we found that we needed local representatives to make sure things went smoothly. Usually in France, if we had a local representative, it was the weak chain in the link. We'd like to control everything ourselves, but sometimes you just, you have to have them. Let's see if I can get this to... Okay, so price. Actually, one thing that we found out, so when we're doing stuff abroad, many countries have complicated VAT rules, and this even applies in the UK. VAT rates can depend on the product, the recipient, the type of project that you're doing. And to be competitive, one of the things so we had to do is obviously register for VAT in many different countries. So registering for VAT in France, for example, is a long-winded, complicated scenario, and making a VAT return that's correct there can be quite tricky. But from the client's point of view, you know, they may be able to pay as little as 7% VAT instead of 19.6% VAT or 21% VAT. So to have a competitive edge, you need to be registered for VAT and you need to know what you're doing with it. One thing we discovered is that taxback.com in Kerry Clune, they run a really good setup where you can get them, they will register you for VAT and they'll do your VAT returns for you and give you guidance on that, and you pay a small fee. You'd never figure it out yourself, to be quite honest with you. Permits, again, some of the locations that we've worked have, you know, a whole permit system. In some places you could have to apply to, you know, park a truck on the road 3 months in advance. Credit terms, I learned a very valuable lesson from Bill Vernon when I was in Romania looking at his son's factory a few years ago. And they told us that if we were ever doing work in Russia or the Ukraine, to get paid 100% upfront and just stick to it and make them ship it. And about 2 months later, we ended up getting an inquiry for a job. It was quite a big job. And I thought, okay, here we go, 100% upfront, and you ship it. And after holding the telephone away from my head for about a minute while he screamed at me, they then asked me for the bank details and they transferred 100% upfront and they collected it. So I owe Bill Vernon big time for that. Delays, agreed terms on timescales. So in some countries, yeah, you need to have, well, we found on larger elaborate projects, you need to have terms in there because they never run smoothly, and you can really end up, we just make a point of sending somebody out by plane to look at it themselves if we're doing that, because you just can't trust the word that you're getting back. And then the other thing, it's important to clear, yeah, who you're doing work for and who's paying the bill. It sounds very, very obvious. For standard domestic stuff, it's not a problem where clients come into our showroom and we do business for them. But when you end up, like the right-hand side, there's a picture of a villa that we fitted out. You can end up going through a lot of handlers and you have to be very careful. We make a point of always, we will not do work unless we meet the client at least once for about 20 minutes because it's too dangerous otherwise. Systems that we've developed in terms of controlling price, we do CGI renders. So the picture on the right-hand side is a drawing that we've done. We've got a whole team in-house that do rendering. And the reason we do this is we send digital contracts out to clients. They can walk around it, zoom around it, look in it, check out all the colors, list all the door handles, knobs, windows, everything that's going into it, and they sign it off. And at least we have a very clear contract in place for what we are doing. And it saves a lot of running around and it saves a lot of meetings as well. People. So again, so who's the client? The owner, the builder, the architect, who's making decisions? I found myself leaving a project. I was about 2 hours from getting on a plane from Monaco, very high-end project. The client wanted high gloss orange and high gloss black kitchen, ready to rock and roll and make it. I met the client for the first time, literally as I was going out the door, and I asked him on question, why did you want high gloss black and orange? To which he said to me, do you know what? I don't really like high gloss black or orange. And in actual fact, I had her a week later down in our factory in Goring, County Wexford, and we did something completely different. There was no communication between the architect, interior designer. It would have been an absolute disaster. So this is back to meet the client, just have one meeting with the client. Client representatives, you have to vet them. You have to make sure that they have, the authority from the client, that they know what they're doing. Sometimes they're very weak and you have to hold their hands. Staffing, if you're exporting on a regular basis, what we found is that you need to have local staffing, people on site to bring the thing together. This is polarized world, something that we learned. So we thought at first when we were exporting from here and doing work in Monaco and Austria and all these various different countries, that'd be a great idea to advertise that, we did this type of work, that people would see it as a benefit. And in actual fact, they don't see it as a benefit. We discovered this. You have to be, so in the UK, we're very much Andrew Ryan UK, we're a local company, we advertise locally. You can't access the Andrew Ryan Ireland website from the UK. You can only, if you try to access the Irish or the UK website from Ireland, you can't do it. We had to silo and product segment these, and it's been much better for our business when you do that. People want to buy locally, they want to feel they're dealing with a local business, and having that is super important. So as I mentioned earlier, we have a country level websites. Our UK and Ireland websites have been localized to appeal to the local markets. You can't access one from the UK from Ireland or Ireland from the UK. So what we've done is, there's a picture of our showroom over in the UK. We've opened up a country-specific showroom. It's a destination showroom. It's big. It's about 3,000 square feet of displays, and people come to visit us. We have a lot of, through IT, you can book visits on iPhones and all the rest of it. So this is how we get a lot of people to come and see us. So promotion. So we deal with architects, we deal with interior designers in each local market in the UK and Ireland, and we have different ways for routing them to our business. We have also migrated from a print focus advertiser to mainly digital. So we manage very tightly controlled online campaigns to drive traffic to our local websites, and then clients, they input their information and they can arrange to see or come and visit us, arrange an appointment. With COVID, what we did is we have, and you see the screen in the middle there, we put all our showrooms virtually online. So as you can see there, people, when they go onto our website, they have to give us a little bit of information, and then they can go in. This is our showroom over in the UK, and they can, click through it and look into various different elements. They can wander around it. We use this for doing remote presentations. We have the Irish websites on Irish showroom on that as well. So it's quite useful. So they can, while they're sitting their sofa or in their bath, we've discovered, Sunday evenings, it's amazing, Saturday mornings, all these times we do a lot of, mapping to see when people come and look at our showrooms on that as well. Oops. All right. So from our experience of export from 2010 to 18 has given us the knowledge to take a strategic plan towards sustainable growth. So we opened our 5,000 square foot premises in February this year, which is a bad time in terms of COVID, because we literally opened it and then they closed it on us. But since then, we've had over 400 inquiries, and this year, even though our showroom has been closed over there, pretty much, it's replaced 18.4% of our turnover. So what's really interesting for us is that when we actually can bring people more readily into it and the thing opens up, it's actually a little bit frightening, because I don't think we'd actually be able to cope from a manufacturing point of view at the minute. So we've a digger out the back working on that at the minute. And that's it. That's literally us and where we are and what we've done.
So Dominic, thank you so much for that. That's really fascinating. And I wouldn't say there were many mistakes there. I'd just say there was lots of practical learnings made on the journey or whatever. Okay, so yeah. It's fantastic. Okay, so maybe if I could ask you to take down your presentation, okay?
Yeah.
And then I'm just going to move to a Q&A session for the next few minutes, okay? And maybe ask Keys to come back and Michael to come back as well, if they were able to switch on, okay? Now, nobody has inundated me with questions as yet, okay, but I have a couple myself, actually, okay? Keys, there's one very specific one here for you about materials. I just need to find it again. And it said, are composite materials like MDF, MFC, real wood, veneered panels considered virgin materials or secondary materials?
Okay, can you hear me, Stephen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I'm online again. Yeah, I saw it coming by. Look, all wood based materials are in a way virgin materials, but like solid wood, that's clear. When it comes to composites, it could contain virgin materials, but it's not just only, because it's a composition of some materials. And the same goes for all kinds of panels and MDF. You have the wood dust. I say the wood dust and the glue to fit it together. So MDF is not a virgin material in that way. But I must be frankly, I am no expert in techniques.
Okay.
I can talk about it as if I am really an expert. But if you have a question about that, what is very important to me, and that's the notion that when we look at composites, for example, the solid surface material, Corian, Hymex, and whatever, that is very good to be recycled.
Okay.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Okay.
So I hope this is an answer to your question. And of course, wood is always the best virgin material you can use, and we can replant it if we do.
Of course.
Forest strategy.
Okay, Paul Farrell, I hope that answers that question for you anyway. Okay, very comprehensively there. I'd just like to remind everybody that those that are on Twitter, if they wanted to tweet out about the conference, that they could use hashtag IWFMN 2020. Let's show that we're a modern sector, okay, and that we're using all of the technologies at our disposal. Michael, if I could come back to you now, I know you probably weren't expecting me to ask you a question, okay, but one thing that's been on my mind, and I'd say lots of other people's mind, is the day of the office as we know it, okay, has changed, okay? And I'm just wondering, because you, in a lot of your business, must be at the forefront of fit out. I'm just wondering, as you look at it, how do you see the office in the near time? You know, will we return to an office environment? Will the office environment be different? Will it play a different role or whatever, okay? And will we need to be providing different services in order to support any changing role that might happen?
Yeah, well, as I finished up in reference to uncertainty, there's no doubt with the pandemic and in the context of uncertainty, you know, we kind of went through a kind of emotional roller coaster to some extent, where the uncertainty started. You thought it was at its worst, maybe in April, May, but then sort of find yourself in August, September, second wave starting to develop, mixed reviews coming from all over the world. And in that context, the States would exercise us a lot, because foreign direct investment for us and what corporates are doing in America has a huge influence on our market. In answer to your question, though, my kind of developed opinion on this is that the things that were being alluded to in terms of the development of the office, these trends had been underway for some time. I mean, I'm talking 5-10 years. As technology had developed and reached critical mass, we were already seeing corporate users modifying how they approach their use of the office. You know, remote working or mobile workers were a feature for some years. Attraction and retention is always going to be an important issue for corporates. So, you know, whether they use less office space, they're already using less office space in a word. I think the other thing that developed in and around the pandemic was obviously while there was a novelty to some extent, and people would have been working from home, or we all went through that marvelous experiment and continue to go through it. But the novelty soon wore off, and particularly not alone for early career starters who, from a mentoring point of view, or gaining of experience, started to lose. Social contact was diminishing. So you could see the stresses and strains developing there. So, you know, in essence, I think it has been, it's sped up the evolution of the office. I think attraction or retention is more of a priority for people, and there is a win-win-win for staff, employers, and society in the context of flexible working. We're seeing it in our own office here, where it's likely more people, if not necessarily all people, may work from home or as required on a day or two a week. But my absolute position would be that the death of the office is more than greatly exaggerated. I do think we'll see some changes in planning. I think people will be more sensitive to health and safety, so touchless arrangements, a focus on why we're going to the office in terms of collaborating, how we're using technology and engaging. But we're social animals at the end of the day. I think we greatly miss that connection. I don't think we achieve to the same extent in a virtual world. So, yeah, I think with the vaccine on the horizon, and as that timescale becomes clear, the dearth of activity will change. People will know they're going back. They'll have an idea of when, and they'll start to make decisions.
Okay. The reason I'm wearing earphones here is not that I'm hard of hearing, but in my new office environment at home, there's 5 of us working or studying at home on a daily basis, and it was more to keep the sounds away from people in the audience, okay, about unusual shoutings or whatever. But in a way, our house is not untypical of where we're at the moment, okay? Some of us will stay at home. Most of us will go back to some sort of shared environment, I believe, or whatever. So thank you for that. Dominic, if I could just come back to yourself actually as well. I see that in the earlier part of your career, you worked in the electronics, the semiconductor business, you know, and I'm just wondering, were there any experiences or learnings that you were able to take from that sector and use them in a way, a traditional industry sector, okay, that might not necessarily have been exposed to many of the processes that you had been exposed to in the electronic industry?
How do I answer that? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I worked designing semiconductor plants back years ago, and the only thing I learned, did a lot of traveling in that, which probably influenced me in that I wasn't afraid to get in an airplane and go out and look for business, because I ended up going around the world quite a lot at that particular time. The main thing is people are the same everywhere, to be honest with you. That's what I got from it. And whether you're doing a very sophisticated semiconductor plant or you're working on a small hotel or a private villa, you know, it's all the same structures in place. You're dealing with the same people. They all have the same issues. And yeah, that's the one thing I took from it. People are the same, and you have to deal with them the same way. And even if it's a very sophisticated thing, you know, people can make very sophisticated mistakes.
Right. Okay.
Or very simple mistakes. So yeah, it definitely meant that I had no problem getting on a plane and going to South France, okay, or wherever. Yeah, that's.
And maybe just second question, just on that South of France. You talked about how you found yourself in the South of France, which was related to an opportunity that presented itself. Mm-hmm. If you look back now, okay, and that hadn't presented itself, might you have started that journey of exporting in a different way? Yeah,
definitely what we've done. You know, we made a lot of mistakes there. We did a lot of business down there. Like, the company survived through the recession because of the South of France, from the Nice area, Monaco area, Valbonne, Biot, all those there. We had years where more than 50% of our turnover was coming out of that particular region. And when we got in there, I just networked the hell out of it, to be honest with you. Right. But I knew that what was driving me sort of around the bend was, we do big projects, say in Cap Ferrat, we did a very big villa. It was huge amounts of money. And as that's coming to an end, I had to find the next project, and I didn't have the systems in place to be generating work in that business. Now, what I was very good at was pulling a rabbit out of the hat and finding the next big project, you know, but I didn't have a sustainable way, and the whole thing was very reliant on me. Right. In which case I was run flat out. So I had to put in place. Now, what we did do, And it was, in one way, it was a mistake. In another way, it was good learning. Was we opened a showroom in Monaco, which was a very expensive thing to do. But what we discovered then was, as we got clients into that, they wouldn't visit it because they're all high net worth, but they'd hop on an aeroplane, fly into Dublin, we bring them down, put them up in Marlfield House, and they come to the factory, no problem.
Right, okay.
So we ended up in a showroom. It cost a fortune, and nobody wanted to go into it down there. But they'd happily hop on an airplane and, you know, come over here. But it did. We had to sort our product out. It became too reliant. Some of these specialist projects, we're very experienced here, but you can only have you have a very limited number of very experienced people who can take on, you know, a very tricky project and see it through. And that's not scalable because you're relying on, you know, very experienced people. So what I needed to do, and that's where we went back at our product range. We had to go back, right, guys, what are we going to do? What are we going to sell? How are we going to educate people to sell this on our behalf? How are we going to manage it? How are we going to educate people to carry this out on site? You know, that we push, how are we going to quality control it? You know, when you're in specialist and you've, like, I found myself in a house in Monaco, and I had a gilder gilding a wardrobe in 24 karat gold, and you're standing there going like, okay, you know, this is risky business here.
Yeah.
So that brought us back to that whole, and we did actually, what helped us, we did a management for growth, which was the IMI and Enterprise Ireland in DCU. And that really opened our eyes, to be quite honest with you, in terms of putting structure on what we were trying to do rather than pulling rabbits out of the hat.
Okay. I mean, pulling the rabbit is great fun at the time, but you're right, it's not sustainable. And in a way, what you've done is you've pivoted slightly from being solely bespoke to, I wouldn't say, I'd hate to say you're in the standardized business because you're not.
No, we're not.
But you've moved nearer to that piece or whatever, okay, that allows you to sort of represent yourself to a wider customer base.
We still take on specialized projects, like we fitted out that Sandy Lane Yacht Club there a year ago.
Right.
Thank God we're not doing it now, and that was very specialized and high value, but they're more icing on the cake, you know, or cherry on the cake. But for the day-to-day bread and butter stuff, you know, and to be honest with you, we will always take on specialist projects simply because we use them to learn a lot of stuff. We can find out where trends are going when we're at that. You're working with top designers from around the world, so you'll see what's going on and you learn new things. But in terms of running a day-to-day business and generating money and profit margins and growing a scalable business, that's not the way forward for us anyway.
Okay, well, look, I'm so delighted I've heard your story. It's a great story or whatever, and well done to you and your brother Aidan as well, okay?
All right.
Keith, if I could just come back to you for one or two quick questions. Obviously, in a circular economy environment, okay, you'll have disruptors coming into the sector. I'm just wondering, within the context of the Netherlands, is the industry seeing a lot of disruptors coming in with new solutions, or is it that some of the older companies, more established companies like Philips, are pivoting with new solutions?
Well, Stephen, there are really disruptive companies. I talked about them. For example, what is important, and I also saw a question about what support do we do. We as an organization support our disruptors.
Right.
Not just, we also have to be aware that we have our own members who have to be disrupted, and that's difficult because they are our members, but we support the front runners, and we develop task forces, for example, and the most important thing, our members, who mostly are small and medium-sized enterprises, cannot do the circular challenge on their own. So we need to work on a chain. And now we are working with companies we never worked with, like DSM, Saba, and all for the chemical industry. And there is one disruptor, for example, it's called, a company is called Niaga, and they have made a glue which under special circumstances can be unglued, unadhesive.
Okay.
And that's very important. And the interesting thing is that Niaga means spelled backwards again.
Okay, right, okay.
So this is very interesting. Another thing, we also, since we just talked about, for example, Dominic, with the challenges with ICT and selling on via web shops, we have a disruption going on because there is a traditional relation between dealers, shops, and manufacturers. And the dealers don't want the manufacturers to talk to the consumers, but the consumers will find the manufacturers. Now there's a disruption in the Netherlands that we are allowed by the dealers to sell the show models of our manufacturers directly to the consumers.
Right.
And that's something new. And I will put the URL in the chat, and it's called showroommodellen.nl.
Okay.
This is disruptive because seems like a small change, but it's like a tiny nose peeking through a curtain. But when you pull the nose, there's a complete camel coming out afterwards. Yep. You understand that?
I do.
Okay. So this is so these kind of disruptions we do have, and also, for example, the bedding company Auping, who is really creating, and they don't use polyurethane anymore, but use polyester. And what are they looking for? They are looking for participants who want to experiment with them. They want to share their knowledge, because the price of polyester is not good enough to really work it out on a big scale. So they want to raise the demand for polyester. And these kind of things we are developing, and then we really need disruptors to put on the new innovations.
The new innovations, okay, really good. I think you can see from the chat box keys that your presentation hit lots of chords with lots of people. So look at it. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and your experience with us here this morning. I hope you can stay with us for today, okay? And thank you. To Dominic as well, I can see great comments in there, Dominic. You know, great story, and thank you for sharing that. And hopefully you can stay around for the discussions as well. I know Mark has moved on, and again, I want to thank him on behalf of the steering group, okay? And Michael, to you for taking on that question when you were not expecting it, okay? And also for your really excellent opening address. So we're going to go to a tea break or a coffee break now, okay? And let me just remind people that what you need to do is there's a new link to go on for the second session.